So here's the deal. I've never finished making an actual game. And I've worked on many different games when I was younger. I'm just a lazy piece of garbage that never finishes anything it starts. So now, during this wonderful time of quarantine, I feel obligated to get myself together and make an actual game. And I'm gonna document the entire process here on YouTube, because I hate myself, and just making the game wouldn't be enough work for me. Let's set some records straight. My first game is gonna be terrible. There's no way someone without the proper experience could make a decent game, and it's okay. We learn by making mistakes, and if we are too afraid to make them, we will either never start the project at all, or we will find ourselves working on the same project for years, overthinking every single detail to make it perfect, just to realize at the end that what we've made is not really that impressive and all we've gained is disappointment. Now, with that being said, I want my first game to be simple, so it won't take too long to make. But at the same time, I don't want to, for example, make a walking simulator, or a simple platformer where you just collect stuff and kill enemies. I want some sort of interesting gameplay mechanic on top of which I'm gonna build the rest of the game. You know Portal, right? So a long time ago, I've played this game called Mario Portal, which combined the Portal mechanics with Mario levels, and it was such a great game. Surprisingly, portals work extremely well in 2D. So maybe I could, analogically, rip off mechanics of Gravity Gun from Half-Life and make a 2D game out of that. As the player, you will have a device which can attract objects around you, and you will have to use it to unlock your way forward. Also, I just remember this video where Half-Life developers react to a speedrun of their game. Specifically this part.
Remember when we tried making the player movement fully simulated by physics, and the first thing players could do was, if you pressed the forward key, you immediately, and walked into a wall, you just died on impact, because the amount of acceleration you actually needed to move at the speed you do in the game, is such that the impact of just walking into a wall kills you.
Yeah. I think we could make the player in my game simulated by physics, so that they could not only attract other objects towards them, but they would also be attracted back. Just like Newton intended. Here's how I imagine that. You have the player and the object. When the player starts pulling, and the object is dynamic, that is, it can be moved, they will both start moving towards each other. However, if the object is static, because it's mounted to the ceiling, for example, only the player will start moving. And this will allow them to move around the level, reach higher elevations and stuff. We can also give our player an ability to crouch, which will make them static, so they won't move when they are pulling other objects. I feel like this is a pretty good set of mechanics, not too complicated, but also can be easily expanded upon. We can, for example, have objects that act like static, but when you pull them while crouching, they will fall off and become movable, become dynamic. Or we can add a different mode for the device that will repel objects instead of attracting them. Okay, but for now, let's keep things simple. We've got the idea, now we just need to choose the engine. I considered Godot, Unity, and Unreal. Unfortunately, I've never used Godot, and I don't really know Python, so I think I'm gonna skip on that one. I've heard many good opinions about Godot, I'm definitely gonna try it at some point, just not with this project. So this leaves us with Unity and Unreal. I tried both of those engines. Personally, I feel some sort of preference towards Unreal. I really don't know why, I can't quite put my finger on it, I just like it. But I need to remember that the game is gonna be made in 2D, and when it comes to 2D, the choice is simple, we're gonna go with Unity. So a few days have passed since I recorded this introduction, and now I actually have a working prototype to show you. I've watched a tutorial on YouTube by Unity on how to make your own 2D character controller. Link is in the description. I went through it just to remind myself on how Unity works in general. And as you can see, I'm using the assets that were provided with this tutorial, so this isn't my level. And now let's take a look at this player controller here. As you can see, we have this rigid body set to dynamic because in the tutorial they've used kinematic and they simulated the physics using their own script. This is not the case here. I'm using dynamic and I set the gravity to 3 just to make it a little bit quicker. I've also have this capsule collider and my own player controller. First of all, I've added the most basic movements, so as you can see I can go to the right, I can go to the left. And the change in velocity is instantaneous, so basically as soon as I start pressing the D key, for example, my character is gonna go to the right with the maximum velocity, instead of slowly speeding up. I've also added support for slopes, so as you can see I can go there, I can go up, I can go down, and my character is sticking to the ground, because if you didn't know, in 2D and 3D also, there's this problem that if you just apply the velocity, for example here to the right, the gravity may not necessarily have the time to counteract this, to pull you back to the ground. So we're gonna do those silly little jumps. But it's not the case here. Okay, but what interests us the most is this little fellow right here. So if you remember, we talked about different kind of objects that we can interact with, static and dynamic. From now on, I'm gonna call them anchors. So this is a static anchor. And what's gonna happen when I start interacting with it by pressing the spacebar, I'm gonna get attracted to it. And it may look a little bit silly at first because the character is just moving in the straight line to this point. But this is because the global gravity that's pulling us down gets disabled as soon as I press the spacebar. And this anchor becomes our only point of attraction. So it's kinda like the center of gravity is in this point right now. That's why we're just basically falling towards it immediately. And of course in the final game, the anchors are gonna be placed in the level by me, right? You won't be, as the player, you won't be able to place them wherever you want, as I can right now. This is just for debugging. Anyway, the most interesting things happen when I have some velocity when I start attracting myself towards this point. Since this is the new center of gravity, just a little bit of tangential velocity will make me enter an orbit around this point. And that's exactly what's happening. Of course, I'm getting closer and closer to the center as the time goes by. But this is because of the drag that I've implemented, so that you cannot spend too much time in the air. Still, this enables us to make some very satisfying maneuvers, I'd say. For example, my favorite thing to do is, let me demonstrate this to you. So if I'm standing right there, right, and imagine that the anchor is placed here, I can do something like this. And it's just so fun. You have no idea how much time I've spent just playing around with this prototype. It's so... I don't know why. Maybe it's just me, but it's just so fun to play around. Also, because I am using the rigid body simulation, I can interact with other rigid bodies. So as you can see, I've just hit this wall very hard, and those blocks have the mass of 3, so they're 3 times more massive than I am. That's why it's so hard for me to get through them. And this is mostly why I didn't want to write my own gravity and stuff like that, as people tend to do with other platformers. Because I would have to write all of this by my own, right? Whereas here I have this out of the box. Okay, so you can probably tell that I'm having a lot of fun with this. I really like this idea, and I'm definitely gonna go with it. The next thing that I wanna do is some sort of a playground, a level where I can experiment with different settings for this player controller. And I want to make it using my own assets, firstly because I want to create my own assets. It seems like an interesting thing to do. And I also want to make it look similar to what the final product is gonna look like, because those assets right here are way too colorful. And once this playground is ready, I'm gonna rewrite this controller because it's an awful mess and I hate it. So we're gonna write this from the scratch and implement some more things. For example, what I really want to do as well, let me quickly illustrate you, but I cannot do that right here. So I can do something like that, and now I'm stuck in here because I'm colliding with this wall, but we could rotate our character towards this point and allow him to walk around this surface. And we could even make this an ability that you'll gain somewhere in the middle of the game, so it's not by default. Anyway, I think that's all for now. I hope no one is watching this, and I'm gonna see you in the next episode. So take care and bye bye.